beautiful friends, it's Amanda here, and today we're talking about a new palette from Makeup Revolution. This is the Forever Flawless Optimum palette. Makeup Revolution just dropped a bunch of brand new palettes. I picked this up in a recent Ulta haul. This was sort of an impulse buy. I saw it in the new at Ulta section when I was shopping with my 20% off purchase coupon, and this just caught my eye. It's only $15. There's 18 shades in here. The packaging is really pretty. I'm a packaging junkie, you probably already know this. This is like a tin or metal outer casing. It has a locking clasp closure, so it's not magnetic, but it is quite easy to open. I appreciate that. Inside, there's a nice big mirror. This does not come with a brush, a sponge tip, or any kind of applicator. I did want to point out that this just came in a generic little plastic sleeve. This doesn't even have the name of the palette printed on it. It just says Shadow Palette. So I assume that they just mass produce these and then use them on all the palettes of the same size, which I actually kind of like. I feel like this is probably a little bit more environmentally friendly since they're not making specific packaging for all their palettes, and since this is plastic, I can just recycle this. I don't feel the need to hoard it because it's not like a beautiful cardboard box. If you're not a makeup collector, that probably sounds crazy, but it is what it is. When we look inside the palette, as I mentioned, there are 18 shades in here. The shade names are printed inside next to the pans. I love that. Thank you, Makeup Revolution. There's a little sticker on the back, but it doesn't have a picture of the shades or the shade names. But I do want to point out that this is cruelty-free and vegan. For all my cruelty-free and vegan friends out there, this is an option for you. Of the 18 shadows, 8 are mattes and 10 are shimmers. We're getting a really good mix of both warm and cool tones. This is also a great mix of neutrals and colorful shades. So I think that's what really grabbed my attention. I just felt like this was an interesting mix of shades. I do feel that it is very cohesive shade-wise, but I understand that a palette like this might be a little intimidating, overwhelming, or maybe you purchase this because you're drawn to it, but then you don't know how to pair the shades up. So when I do my tutorials, I do have 2 different tutorials for this palette. I'm gonna show you a really easy way to use this palette and many others like this, where it looks like the shades are kind of random, but there's actually a rhyme and a reason to why it's laid out this way. I like to think of this palette and others like this in sections. So when you take a look at each column, that's sort of a trio of shades that you can use together. So this is an easy one. One of my looks with this palette, I used this first little row here. I feel like this is a good starting place. If you're comfortable with neutrals, then you know this is going to be right in your wheelhouse. The look that I'm wearing right now actually is this row. I chose it because it has 2 shades that I typically wouldn't go for, and I just wanted to try to experiment and get out of the box a little bit with this palette. So this matte navy blue, like a pale powder blue, are 2 shades that are not typically what I use. So I tried to branch out a little bit there, so I will show you some tutorials using those. I especially want to mention that method of breaking up a palette with this palette because I think this is a great place if you're a beginner, you're not super comfortable with makeup application, then investing in a $15 palette is a great way to sort of play and get comfortable before you start spending $40 or $50 on an eyeshadow palette and then it's just too much, it's too overwhelming. This sort of sectioning method can also be a great way to branch out a little bit. If you're like me and you get a palette like this and you think the colors are so cool, but then you find yourself really just gravitating towards the same 5 or 6 shades in a palette, this is a good way to sort of force yourself out of that box and try something new like I did today. Before we get to those tutorials, I do want to show you swatches of this entire palette. So I'm going to be doing both finger and brush swatches just on the inside of my arm with no primer, no foundation, nothing like that down first, just the swatches directly onto my skin. The finger swatches will be on top and then the corresponding brush swatch will be below. And as always for my swatch videos, I'll be using my e.l.f. flat eyeshadow brush for all the swatches swatches, just completely dry brush. I'm not going to dampen for any of the metallic shades. Then I'll clean off the brush in between each shade using my Veramona color switch so that there's no transfer between swatches. Starting from right to left, two shimmers, Peak and Warrior, a nice matte transition called Perfect. Parallel is a shimmery lavender. Then we have a deeper matte transition shade called Flawless. And lastly, a pale shimmering green called Mineral. Moving on to the second row, we have two mattes, Prime and Fighter. Then three shimmer shades, Advantage, Greatest, and Outstanding. And lastly, in this row, we have a matte black. This one's called Onyx. It's not super, super dark and opaque, as you can see, but it will definitely get the job done. For the last row, we're looking at a lot of warm tones here. Choice, Own, which is a matte. Energy is a shimmer. The next two are mattes, Capital and Maximum. And lastly, a bronzy shimmer shade called Unmatched. Now that you've seen all the swatches, let's jump into some looks using this palette, and then I'll wrap up all my thoughts at the end. I always prime my eyes with my favorite eye base. It's the MAC Paint Pot in the shade Painterly. Then I'm going to set that eye base using a little bit of my MAC Studio Water Weight Powder so that I have a nice smooth surface to blend these shadows on top of. For my transition shade, I'm using Prime. I'm going to use all three shadows in this row. I'm just blending that shade into my crease, and I'm also going to apply it along my lower lash line. And for all over the lid, I'm using Choice, just applying that with my finger and patting it really quickly and easily all across the eyelid. And I'm taking Prime again, blending a little bit just so that we don't have a harsh line where that metallic shade was applied. Next, I'm using Peak. This is a perfect inner corner highlighting shade with a little detail brush, and you can certainly just end it there using this one section, but I'm going to amp it up just a little bit. I'm going to take the shade Own, a beautiful matte cranberry shade, and build that up a little bit on the outer part of my eye to add some depth and just make this a little bit deeper and smokier type of look. I also put that just on the very outer edge of my lower lash line, curled my lashes, and added some of my L'Oreal Lash Paradise mascara. Here's my finished look. I'm sorry I don't have a good close-up. I totally forgot to shoot a close-up of this look, but this is the finished, just warm, neutral look. Now we're going to move on to the blue look that I've been wearing. I prepared my eyes in the same way, first with my MAC Paint Pot, and then setting that with the Studio Water Weight Powder. Again, I'm using this whole row as my trio of shadows, so applying Flawless into the crease as my transition shade. I'm really setting up my look in the same way with the matte brown as my crease shade and my lower lash line shade. Now we're going to build up some color. I'm taking Maximum, and on a flat, dense brush, I am packing that onto the lid, starting in the center and then working my way outwards so that I will have a really solid sort of block of eyeshadow across my entire lid. And this did take some building up to get as opaque as I wanted it. Then, of course, I'm going to go back with Flawless and just work on the edges a little bit so that it's a little bit softer looking and not quite so harsh. And I ended up going with my finger right in the center of the lid with that shade Maximum just to get a really rich payoff. I did use a clean, just plain brush with no product to work on the edge just a little bit there to soften it up. My third shadow in this row, Outstanding, was the perfect inner corner highlight. Just built that around the inner part of my eye, curled my lashes, and again added my L'Oreal Lash Paradise mascara to finish off the look. This is how it turned out. I think this is so cool. Very simple and yet impactful. Not something I would typically wear, but I actually really love how this one turned out. All in all, I'm very happy with my purchase in this palette. I do think that the shadows in here are better than others I've tried from Makeup Revolution. I wouldn't say this is competing quality-wise with my beloved ColourPop palettes. I'm actually very pleasantly surprised with the formulation in here. The pigmentation is pretty darn good. It's not like a super creamy, knock your socks off ABH type of formula. But that's not always the best. Look, don't get me wrong, I love that, but I think that this is a lot more user-friendly because it's buildable. It's not as easy to screw up a look with shadows like this. And I think this is great for somebody who is either a beginner and just learning to play with shadows, or somebody who's branching out into colors and not wanting to take a leap into a really expensive colorful palette. But I would actually recommend this to anyone who's attracted to this color scheme. I think it's quite a good palette. I'm a little bit surprised, pleasantly surprised by it. This is the kind of thing I would like to travel with. It's really sturdy. The packaging feels very solid. I would be confident to pack this. The mirror is really nice. It's large and clear. There's a great mix of shades in here. There's a little bit of everything. I do like the balance between mattes and shimmers. I'm glad that it's about even. There's some really nice cool tones. There's some really beautiful, rich, warm tones. There's some jewel tones. There's a little bit of color, but it's not like just a pop of color. You know, there's a solid amount of color in here. I've had a lot of fun playing with this. I know I'm going to continue to experiment with different shade combinations in this palette. And as somebody who owns a lot, I mean a lot of eyeshadow palettes, I definitely have more than 200 eyeshadow palettes. So for something to make me feel inspired or intrigued is kind of a tough sell at this point. And I didn't think that Makeup Revolution would be the one to do it, but this little $15 palette it's making me pretty happy. The price point is nice, packaging is nice, shades are nice, so I don't really have any complaints. There are a couple shadows that felt a little bit more dry, so they come off a little bit patchy on first application, particularly those darker mattes, the matte black and the matte navy. But I'm wearing that matte navy blue all over my eyes today. I think it looks really nice. It definitely looks blue. It didn't turn into like a muddy gray type of shade. I'm definitely very pleased with this. There are a couple other palettes in this Flawless eyeshadow line. There's your just regular, everybody makes a warm orangey brown one. I wasn't really attracted to that. There's a really vivid brights, which I would consider, but it wasn't just making me click add to cart right away. Looks pretty though. There's also a like pinky purple one. I originally was going to purchase this one as well, but I thought I would test out the formula first. So I may actually go back for the pink and purple palette since I am so happy with the performance of this one. I would love to hear your thoughts on this. Are these palettes on your radar? Which one of those shade combos was just really calling to you? I always love to hear what you guys think about things too. So please leave a comment with your thoughts. And as always, thank you so much for watching. I'll see you in my next video. Bye. Where's my swatch brush? Why am I always losing my swatch brush? It's in front of your face. And then I clean off the Forever Flawless. I mean, okay, it does have an expiration date, so I don't know about forever. These aren't like rinky-dink little pans either. These are good sized pans. I mean, okay, Makeup Revolution. I see what you're doing here. Designed and developed in London. Distributed from Illinois, USA. Made in China. It's a palette of the world. I might be taking this on vacation with me. Mix it up a little bit. I like it. Nobody knows. No one knows. It's fine. Caffeine break. Oh crap, my camera's gonna die. Oh, I don't think I shot a close-up of my first eye look that I did. You had one job. I actually have like 20 jobs, but it's fine. What do you think? Is navy blue my color? Because I'm kind of feeling it, and I was feeling my Game of Thrones look that I did with that like deep blue too. So am I a blue eyeshadow girl now? Who am I? What happened? Having a eyeshadow identity crisis. Identity crisis. Let me stop. All right. Sorry about that. That's enough. That's enough from you. Bye.